Hello everyone, my name is Vera Amesqua, and I'm a graduate student in anthropology and archaeology at Harvard University.
And I am Ekaterina Menkina, a graduate student in anthropology at the University of Alabama.
Today we have the pleasure of presenting our mini-film, which we have been working on for the last 2 years, called
The Light Within the Shadows:
Ritual, Myth, and the Underworld.
We took on the adventure of creating this film to preserve indigenous history by creating 3D modeling of the rock art that was created 2,000 years ago and that we are slowly losing due to limited preservation resources. We want to make the public aware of these hidden treasures so we can all be a part of maintaining art and history alive for indigenous communities today.
In today's film, we will be discussing Paint Rock's landscape and its location to help you get acquainted with the region that we're working with. We will also be discussing Mesoamerican myths that helped influence some of the art of Paint Rock, as well as how archaic cores allow fundamental elements of Mesoamerican ideology to be adopted and transformed into art motifs, which we are currently investigating at Paint Rock. So without further ado, let us begin.
As one of the largest pictograph sites in Texas, Paint Rock is recognized as a cultural gem for containing over 1,500 pictographs, with some art panels dating back anywhere between 2250 BCE and 600 AD. The town, which got its name from the rock site, is located in Concha County, with a population of 229 as of the 2025 census. At Paint Rock, you can find both pictographs and petroglyphs. Pictographs are images or symbols painted or drawn on surfaces like rock faces, cave walls, or cliff to communicate ideas, stories, and important events. Unlike petroglyphs, which are carved or etched into stone, pictographs are created using natural pigments such as minerals, charcoal, or plant-based dyes. During our last 2 trips to Paint Rock, Vera and I embarked on a short drone photogrammetry project which inspired us to consider the meanings and intentions of creating rock art, and how the ancestral communities viewed time, space, and the universe.
When you put them on stones like this, they're going to last an awfully long time. And so for us to still have that understanding of what their meanings were when they were first put up here, and they may have had more meanings than I'm speaking about today, but those things have been passed to us, a lot of them orally, even though most of the stuff is not written. So nowadays we have a lot of written languages and that we communicate with, but in these old days, this was the written communication. So when you see things like these objects up here that have been painted to us, those are words speaking to us, telling us about life and how we should live our lives and how we should help each other.
During the time we were photographing the petroglyphs for documentation, we got to see the solar interactions of the glyphs. The solar interactions led us to return to Paint Rock to film the winter solstice.
This is December 21st, so all day it's been sprinkling. Finally now the weather is a bit better. However, we are not sure if we're going to capture any of the solar interactions, but also a lot of the events, unfortunately, none of them will most likely happen today.
Of course, the winter solstice panel that we're not being able to see today is a truly remarkable, a very sophisticated panel. And I mean, we keep learning more and more about it too.
Paint Rock is located in west central Texas. The cliff-edged site is about 300 meters long and is part of the Campbell Range. The Concho River is located south of the site where a few springs run near the edges of the cliff, which we believe was occupied by ancestral communities due to the location near the water and the resources provided by the flora and fauna found in this region.
Because it is centrally located, we believe that paint rock served as a cross-cultural pathway for different indigenous peoples of the past. The spatial analysis and archaeological evidence suggest that tribes who have controlled and contributed to the petroglyphs were the Humanos, Caddo, Apache, and Comanches, as well as other migrating groups. Interaction and exchange across these cultures shaped core concepts of celestial archetypes and cosmological forces.
Dug out canoes out of Cyprus, and when you're talking about the transportation, which you're absolutely right, that the Concho and the Colorado, I think, would have been wonderful rivers to use with dugout canoes. And you could do trading, like the Humanos are noted for doing trading out.
During the last 2 months, Kat and I have been progressively working on a project, and we've been trying to capture the solar interactions between the sun and the petroglyphs that are painted onto the rock. We've been focusing primarily on the winter solstice panel. Due to inclement weather, we couldn't actually capture them, but we are showcasing several photographs that we have from previous winter solstice days, where we do capture this specific solar interaction between the winter solstice panel and the sun.
So the experts say this is the first one found. Now I would say that's the first one found.
The walking man ascending toward the sun.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, that may be connected with the hero twins too.
And I think what draws our attention to this location is the precise occurrence in which it happens. So every winter solstice day, right at noon, there's this point of light, or light dagger as they call it, that pierces through the middle of the petroglyph and splits it in half. And I think there are several concepts that we need to observe and that we need to analyze. The first one would be, because there's a solar marker that occurs at a specific time cyclically every single year, we're talking about the principal preposition of Nawa imagining, and that is that all things that move are alive, and if they are alive and move, that they can be measured in time.
I'm an archaeologist, and my passion is the rock art. I'm convinced that every single figure is depicted with a specific reason, or for an nothing is random. Nothing is random here. So I think every single motif and its attributes are important. So I'm not attached to a specific symbol, because I think everything is part of the whole narrative.
I think it really speaks about the group that used to reside here as a manifestation of storytelling. And it is where they are imbuing the essence of life, time, and motion by creating all of these petroglyphs in paint.
So we have a myth that centers around that. This is a myth that's relatively common from about Belize all the way up to the Arctic Circle of the hero twins. And so there's a woman that conceives these twins. And there's a million different versions of it, and so it's not totally clear which culture this painting is emerging from. But we can tell that she's given birth to twins, and we tell that she's died in the process of giving birth, which are two of the common elements. In many of the versions, she conceives the twins via the sun. And so she sort of ultimately represents the earth, And so the earth is a feminine force and the sun is a masculine force, and this sort of coming together gives us the fertility of the world. But so at 10:30 in the morning on winter solstice, she conceives the twins.
And then we do have the decapitation scene on a different panel where the sun actually gets to decapitate some of the people that come out on these petroglyphs. And we also as well have another panel of a ball player with very, very large hands, which we believe was created this way to speak more about that perhaps he was highly skilled, very talented in this sport.
These stories do have time in them, but they use solar time instead of using if you write a novel, you can have flash forwards and flashbacks and all that sort of thing. You can move time whichever way you want. Well, it's not true here. Time only does one thing here. It does what the sun's doing.
The Maya, the glyph, the king glyph for the Maya is a 4-petaled flower, and it stands for the day for the sun as a unit of time.
When Kat and I first began our research at Paint Rock, we looked through a lot of photographic data, some which included images that our dear friend Kim Cox had supplied over to us. At this point, we both realized that we had captured a famous traditional tale of heroic gods who triumph over evil. The scenes that captivated us narrate a story of creation, and they bring in supernatural beings who carry the ancient word of the gods and utilize Earth's synchronicity to tell its story. In this remote location, the sun is the narrator. Time and space hold the creation of the world, and we are its spectators. Oral myths tend to vary considerably from place to place. They may be tailored to different audiences, regions of the world, or even cultural experiences. So it is by no means a surprise that we have different versions of Blood Moon's tale throughout different regions. What is true is that inspiration may be acquired from oral myths and presented in different ways. We see this translated into rituals, symbols, and eventually become oral history that carries purpose. It helps us understand the world and everything in it. There is a version of Blood Moon's tale that offers us understanding of some of the symbolism present at Paint Rock. The book Breath and Smoke explores the use of tobacco among the Maya of Central America, revealing tobacco as a key topic of pre-Columbian art, iconography, and hieroglyphic text that sheds light on the practices still present today, and some of which derive from ancestral times. The version that captivated us was the hummingbird tale that depicts Moon as the mother of tobacco, which is conceived as the original intoxicant and medicine of the world. In this tale, Blood Moon transforms via the intoxication of sex. She becomes the honey, and eventually, with the sweetness of it, she becomes Balche. In some versions, she becomes the mother of bees, mother of maize. She's the mother of all curative or destructive forces. But above all, it makes her the patroness of a lot of important aspects into Mesoamerican life.
In the hummingbird tale, Lord Kin spies the girl Shaktani weaving in the courtyard of her house and determines to have her. At first, he tries to impress her with his hunting prowess and grabs her attention. Impressed by his apparent hunting skills, she comments on it to her father, who is a powerful sorcerer. Suspecting a trick, her father induces her to take some nishtamal, which is a lime water from soaking maize kernels for grinding, and throw it on the path where Kin passes each day. Kin slips on it and falls and runs away in shame. Still desiring the maiden, Kin borrows the skin of a hummingbird and transforms himself with it. Shaktani sees the hummingbird sucking the nectar of the flowers of a tobacco plant, which was grown from the mixture of lime water and the ashes of the deer stuffing he was carrying at some point. Desiring to have the handsome little bird, she asks her father to shoot it with his blowgun. He does so, dropping her weaving to the ground The girl picks the bird up and revives him with maize and cacao. She takes him to her bedroom, where he resumes his human form and persuades her to elope with him. That night, they set forth and escape in a canoe. His father, finding out that they elope, sends Chok, the god of rain, and Storm to strike them dead. King turns the girl into a crab, and he transforms into a turtle. But Chok's lightning strikes Shaktani, blowing her into pieces. With the help of the dragonflies, they place her remains in 13 jars and leaves them in an old woman for 13 days. Upon his return, the jars are buzzing and humming. One by one, the jars are opened. All types of insects and snakes come out of the jars, and Shaktani is one of the very last one, very tiny in size. King orders a man to throw the jars in the river, but he ends up opening all of them out of curiosity and releases all the vermin into the world.
I think it is important to note that myths evoke such a force within ancestral societies that it helps them lay down the groundwork of how to maintain a society operational and sustainable, and it materializes this new reality through myths. If they can imitate this behavior, then it allows it to become real in nature, and all of a sudden life, the environment, all of it has purpose, and it carries intrinsic value because it helps them connect to the cosmic rhythms of the world and adapt. Symbols we see at Paint Rock have the ability to withstand time. They leave us with remnants of a hard nucleus that forms fundamental values, beliefs, and practices. They serve as cultural units that identify the relationships established via cosmovision and provide messages through iconography, narrating stories of the construction of the old world, making it anew with each cyclical solar ceremony we witness at Paint Rock.
Investigations that Vera and I have conducted at Paint Rock really come to show the typology of iconography. They establish connections with the gods in different worldly planes, making reproduction of these pictographs a ritual event where sympathetic magic comes to play through an altered state of consciousness. It also reveals the possibility that shamanic priests may have shared some sacred places together and perhaps borrowed from each other's core elements depicted through visions. That is why it is really important to look at the thick description of each individual messages, because styles vary, and sometimes the stylistic deviations we see does not only signify a different author, but also how they are illustrating a different message.
For example, at Paint Rock, you do see images of the sun that vary drastically. There are some that illustrate shapes inside of the sun that sometimes make it look like a clock, especially when you have sunlight daggers that hit right in the middle of it. There are other times where the inside of the sun is painted in black, which perhaps could be detailing an event in the sky, maybe a solar eclipse. And then there's other ones that beg us to question the intentions. There are some that look like sun shields, which could be narrating a combat between enemies, or possibly a coup taking place for the dethronement of a particular regional priest. It just kind of depends on the thick description of the panel itself.
What we do know is that these symbols contain sacred messages and remain deeply significant to their descendants, who visit the rock art to connect with their heritage, honor their ancestors, and continue cultural practices rooted in these sacred places. These paintings meant something really important to the people who made them, and we want to honor their art, rituals, and practices with this film.
So there are lots of software online, like suncalc.org does a great job of tracking the sun throughout the day. You can put in coordinates for anywhere in the world. and it will tell you like how long a shadow is at that time, what angle the sun is at. So I started just playing around with that software and trying to see if there was any pattern to where the sun was pointing when different solar interactions were happening, or how long a shadow was at that time.
In the summer of 2023, Vera and I joined the watch party at Paint Rock, which consisted of Joshua, Jeremy and his students, as well as a couple of locals. On the night of June 21st, we observed the full moon rising near the southern major lunar standstill. The purpose of this gathering was to understand if there are any lunar interactions during the full moon. Across the entire cliff edge side, everyone stood by different rock art panels to make sure we don't miss any possible lunar markers. It was so bright outside that we didn't even need to use our flashlights to climb the rocks. We saw some messier versions of the winter solstice marker, such as the decapitation panel and the ball player panel. In the discussion of the findings from this watch, Joshua stated that there wasn't any concrete evidence that the ancestors at Paint Rock designed any pictographs to interact with moonlight. It was too dim to see these lunar interactions clearly, and everyone got pretty tired after 1 a.m. and could have missed them. Nevertheless, we gained a better understanding of how these interactions occur and what equipment might be necessary for the next lunar standstill observation. The shared bonding, camping experience, and collective passion for celebrating indigenous culture brought everyone together, making the trip truly meaningful. Despite the challenges of deciphering and documenting glyphs, we preserve rock art for archaeology, for the public, for the academic community, or for anyone interested in indigenous art. It's helpful to have three-dimensional models so that everyone can observe and study rock art from home. I use both professional and open-source software to create 3D models of the petroglyph panels as well as the whole rock art site itself. The big goal is to complete an immersive 3D model of the entire site, including the surrounding landscape and the rivers for public accessibility online.
Therefore, because I believe that this location has so much to offer, I think it's really important for us to be able to fund more research so we can expand not just on the symbolism and imagery and capturing solar markers, but also on trying to decipher what some of these panels are and the influence that we get to see not just in Nahuatl cosmology, but also Native American cosmology.